Right now, the February 2026 winter storm Fern is officially over, but the crisis in the United States is not. The main storm circulation has moved on. The heaviest bands are no longer stacking up on radar, but the country is still living inside the consequences, inside the cold, inside the outages, inside the silence that happens when the lights don't come back on fast enough. The confirmed death toll stands at asterisk 100. Say that number out loud because it keeps slipping behind the weather graphics. Asterisk 100 dead. Not from one single cause, but from a chain reaction exposure and brutal wind chills, crashes on iced-over highways, accidents during cleanup, and medical emergencies triggered by physical strain and extreme cold. And the power story is still the defining line between inconvenience and catastrophe. At the worst point, more than asterisk 800,000 customers were without electricity across the storm footprint. In many places, the outage wasn't just dark. It meant no furnace fan, no space heater, no working outlets to charge a phone, no reliable way to know what was coming next. In the maps and satellite loops, the impact zone stretches like a corridor of winter damage, S-groove from Texas to New York, S-groove sweeping across the south and into the northeast where snow, sleet, and freezing rain did what they always do. They turned ordinary infrastructure into fragile infrastructure. And now, another threat is already being discussed in forecast rooms, another winter system, more snow potential, and a cold pattern that refuses to fully release its grip. The next round doesn't have to be historic to be dangerous. It only has to arrive while people are still recovering. Here is the important part. Ashed. This storm ended, but the conditions that made it deadly have not fully left. To understand why Winter Storm Fern became so destructive, you have to rewind to the atmosphere before the headlines, before the airport boards went red, before the outage maps lit up, before the death toll began to climb. A powerful asterisk low pressure system, organized and intensified within a larger winter pattern that had already primed the country for disruption. The ingredients were classic, but the scale was not. Fern fed on asterisk 2 moisture sources, asterisk warm humid air drawn north from the asterisk Gulf of Mexico asterisk, and additional storm energy and moisture tied to the broader Pacific-driven flow-feeding systems across North America. Then the collision happened. An asterisk Arctic air mass asterisk surged south and dug in. When that cold air met the warmer, wetter air being pulled into the storm, the precipitation turned complicated and dangerous. Snow formed where the atmosphere stayed cold from top to bottom. But farther south and along transition zones, the setup created the kind of winter weather that quietly destroys infrastructure, freezing rain and sleet, liquid water falling into sub-freezing surface air, ice building layer by layer on trees and power lines until they fail. In satellite imagery, Fern would have looked like a sprawling comma of cloud-bright white bands arcing across the central U.S., thickening as the system matured, with a secondary zone of glaze and ice stretching across parts of the south. It's the kind of storm that doesn't just hit one region. It links regions together in shared disruption. Its path traced the familiar continental route, over the asterisk Rocky Mountains, asterisk central U.S., driving into the asterisk south asterisk, and finally pushing into the asterisk North Sea asterisk. The timeline ran from asterisk January 23 to January 26, quote, but its aftermath extended far beyond that window. At peak warning coverage, tens of millions were under winter weather alerts and emergency messaging, and then the impacts stacked one on top of another until the system felt less like weather and more like a nationwide stress test. Electricity failed at scale. Outages climbed past asterisk 800,000 customers without power, and at the height of the crisis, the number exceeded asterisk 1 million asterisk. That's not a localized storm problem. That's a multi-state humanitarian problem, because when the air is dangerously cold, power's not a convenience. It's survival. Air travel collapsed next. More than asterisk 11,000 flights asterisk were canceled in a single day, turning major hubs into bottlenecks and stranding travelers in terminals and hotel lobbies, waiting for rebooking lines and weather windows. When one major airport shuts down, the network absorbs it. When several do, the network breaks. And in New York, the snow totals were not just scenic, they were operational. Double-digit accumulations buried streets, clogged transit edges, and made every emergency trip slower and riskier. The wind made it worse. The cold made it last longer. By the time the storm finally weakened, at least asterisk 100 asterisk people had lost their lives, and the country realized this was not only a storm story, it was a system story. For millions of people, the hardest part of Winter Storm Fern begins after the precipitation ends, when the plows have passed once, but not twice. When the street looks cleared but the side roads are not. When the storm has moved on but your apartment is still losing heat. When your phone is at 6% and you don't know where to charge it. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned. Asterisk, heat, and certainty. Walk into one of the emergency shelters still open tonight. Gym floors are lined with cots and folded blankets. Children play quietly with donated toys while their parents huddle around extension cords trying to charge phones. A low hum fills the room space heaters, whispered conversations, the occasional cry of a baby that's overtired from too much chaos and not enough sleep. This is the part of the storm that never shows up in snowfall totals. The response footprint has been enormous. Hundreds of trained disaster responders deployed, coordinating with local partners across multiple states. Shelters and warming centers expanded, not as a symbol, but as an emergency necessity, because prolonged cold turns every outage into a countdown. In New York City, that countdown has already been fatal. 18 people were found dead outdoors during the extreme cold stretch. The city expanded shelter options, opened additional units, and operated dozens of warming centers. Even in a place with extensive infrastructure, cold can still find the gaps. People who are unhoused, people who are isolated, people who fall asleep thinking they can make it through one more night. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned. Asterisk, heat, and certainty. Now look south and west along the storm corridor because Fern's most punishing feature wasn't always snow. In many communities, it was ice. Ice that loaded trees until they snapped. Ice that dragged lines down. Ice that turned restoration into dangerous, slow, physical work carried out in bitter temperatures. Utility crews were staged and rotated. Emergency operations centers coordinated local requests. Road restrictions were implemented to keep key routes passable for emergency vehicles and restoration convoys. It's an unglamorous kind of mobilization. Trucks, salt, tow operations, guard deployments, plow shifts, and thousands of small decisions made under pressure. Airlines adjusted policies, too flexible rebooking, waived change fees, and rolling cancellations that tried to keep people from showing up to airports that couldn't safely operate. But even with those steps, the ripple effects were huge, because the modern travel network depends on tight timing. A storm like this breaks timing, and then there's the crisis you don't see when you look out your window. The blood supply. Winter storms forced the cancellation of more than 500 blood drives resulting in 20,000 blood and platelet donations going uncollected. That is not an abstract number. It is operating room math. It is trauma care math. It is the quiet tension inside hospitals when they have to ration, postpone, or adapt because the supply chain of generosity and logistics has been interrupted. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned. Heat and certainty. Now the storm's regional breakdown comes into focus. New York, remains the symbolic edge of the story. Major snowfall, major travel disruption, and now a renewed concern about additional snow threats as the broader cold pattern persists. The Northeast is not just cleaning up, it is bracing. And in the South, including states like North Carolina, within the broader response corridor, winter impacts behave differently. Ice storms don't need huge snowfall totals to cripple a region. They need the right temperature profile and just enough freezing rain. Once that happens, roads become traps and outages become emergencies. Here is the important part. New York, a state that plans for winter, has extended its statewide emergency order because the Fern aftermath is still a live emergency, not a closed chapter. When you step back from the day-to-day updates, Winter Storm Fern looks less like a one-time disaster and more like a warning label. The first lesson is the grid. Aging distribution systems, tree-lined corridors, and ice vulnerability form a predictable chain. Freezing rain is a force multiplier. It doesn't just make travel dangerous, it makes power restoration harder, slower, and riskier. And when that happens during a long-duration cold outbreak, the consequences escalate from inconvenience to life-threatening. The second lesson is transportation fragility. The aviation system is built for efficiency. That efficiency becomes vulnerability when multiple hubs are hit at once. One airport disruption can be rerouted. A continent-spanning winter event can't. That's how you get a single-day wave of 11,000 canceled flights, and then days of delays behind it. The third lesson is how quickly support systems become survival systems. Shelters become critical infrastructure. Warming centers become life-saving nodes. Even blood donation becomes an emergency asset because hospitals cannot manufacture blood on demand. When 20,000 donations vanish from the system, medical care doesn't collapse all at once. It tightens, it delays, it strains. There is also a deeper climate signal. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. That means when cold air and storm systems do line up, the result can be heavier snow, more intense ice storms, and larger swings between unseasonable warmth and dangerous Arctic outbreaks. Winter Storm Fern wasn't only a test of forecasts. It was a test of endurance of workers, of volunteers, of families, of systems that are expected to function perfectly even when the environment stops cooperating. The question now is not only how to rebuild, but how to make sure the next Winter Storm Fern does not push the same systems even closer to the breaking point. Tonight, Winter Storm Fern is fading from the maps and the next storm is still approaching. But for millions of people, this winter will be remembered not by storm names, but by nights spent in cold houses, by long lines at shelters, and by the quiet fear of wondering what happens if the lights go out again. Some people will remember the sound of branches cracking under ice. Others will remember the moment the heat stopped. Others will remember how the darkness felt, not dramatic, not cinematic, just heavy and long and uncertain. And still, there are scenes of resilience that matter. Neighbors running extension cords to each other's homes, so one living room can stay warm. Volunteers driving hours to staff shelters because somebody has to keep the doors open. Line crews working through the night, hands numb inside gloves, climbing into damaged corridors to pull power back across neighborhoods. Hospital staff stretching dwindling supplies while *20,000 missed donations echo through the system like an invisible shortage. We will keep tracking both the science and the human stories as this historic winter continues to unfold. If you found this update useful, consider sharing it, subscribing, and letting us know how these storms are affecting you and your family. And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and stay prepared. How do you think your community should change after what this winter has revealed?